Hi, everybody. I'm glad to see you. And this is our final time together, and you'll see what we're going to do. Mostly, we'll do a little review of some of the matter that we've been exploring, and then we're finally going to uh, experience the Hamsa mantra, which is the mantra that is specifically aligned with breath awareness from the tantric tradition of Kashmiri Shaivism and from other aspects of the yoga canon. And we're also going to dive a little bit into the Kularnava Tantra, which I think you're going to adore. And so we have a few things to cover. But I thought we would do a little movement with our body so that we can prepare ourselves for some breath awareness and for paying attention. And you know, many of us here do asana, and one of the purpose of asana is actually to strengthen the body so that we can hold and maintain the power of transcendental experiences. And you need a strong body and also a strong mind, which they often go together. So that's one of the reasons why we definitely do body work when we're in these traditions. So the first thing we'll do right now is go ahead and bring the chin toward the throat. And if you want to, you can open your mouth and move your chin from side to side and massage the thyroid a bit, which is a kind of Jalandhara Bandha, okay? Then you can interlace your hands and rest them on the back of the head and just start to rest the weight of your hands and arms on your head. Let your elbows fall towards your head and just take a deep breath because you're stretching your spinal cord now. And we'll take our hands down. And we're going to, if you will, interlace your hands, reach them up. You can't see mine, they're out of the frame, but you're going to go ahead and press up, okay? At that same time, you'll push down. It's very tantric of us to push into the sky as we press down into the earth. And then you're going to pull your shoulder blades toward the spine. And at that time, we're feeling some discomfort, some boundary to our interoception. You know, you're feeling within. And you're breathing in to address that feeling without judging it. Good. Now, in yoga, you keep doing it. You're pressing up. You're feeling that stretch past the comfort zone in your armpits, which is going to help shoulder tension. Then we'll take our hands behind us and elbows wide, and we're going to take the armor off. And I got a pretty sad past few days. I mean, I'm indoors a lot, not getting out for the vitamin D, and the shoulders come forward to express that feeling of sadness. So you know what? You can reverse engineer your joy as you take your elbows wide, break the armoring in the chest, and especially in the shoulders and the upper chest, and lift your chest, uplifting your heart. And now we're going to do that pursed lips inhalation that people always say you have to breathe through your nose. Well, let's do the cooling breath through our lips as we inhale, tasting the wine of the prana. You can blow it out. That'll help reduce allostatic load, the chemistry of stress. Breathe in through your lips again and taste and feel the delicious prana, the essence of life. And exhale through your lips if you want. Good. And we'll bring our palms up and open them. And in these gestures, along with our breath awareness, we provide a support for an uplifted mood. Let's do a little twist, and then we'll do a little bit more breath awareness. You're going to take your left hand behind you, your right hand on your left knee, and and then just give yourself, as you pull your left shoulder blade towards your spine, push down with your hand, okay? And you're feeling this amazing Newtonian physics thing that when you push down, you go up in this plane of reality. And so you feel that when you press against the ground, what is hard, when you push against it, you go away, you lift up and exhale back to center. That's how the hard stuff gives us something to push away. Now, if you want to, you can raise your right arm way up, put it behind you, and place your left hand. Remember how we want to keep the back of the neck long? Well, simply just pull your chin in towards your throat, take your right shoulder blade towards your spine, and reach with your crown of your head and take a breath. I'm going to do the cooling breath. Sumi for breathing through my lips. I'm going to do it. If you want to, breathe in through your lips. How delicious. And I'm going to blow through the lips too. Good. It's coming back to center. Good. So we're now going to place our hands on our lower ribs. One of our fellow students had asked us if we would lay out a system or some kind of breath management thing to do, and this is part of what we're doing now. So take your hand on your lower ribs, and you're going to breathe in 5 times, feeling the ribs expand into your hands, the lower ribs. Take your time. And we're breathing in and out through our nose. And it feels good. Your lower lungs are receiving, and there's a sense of well-being when you take the prana or the air deep into those lungs. You know, gratitude is something that all the spiritual traditions suggest, but you know, you can create a sense of gratitude through breath. And I'll show you what we're going to do. We're going to inhale and hold the breath. I'm still holding my ribs. Now, as you hold your breath, expand your belly and take a few moments. So you're going to get a lot of desire, a lot of tension is going to build up. And it's the tension of wanting one thing only, and the only thing. And now exhale. And you feel that gratitude. And just breathe naturally. The mood chemistry is literally chemistry, and the gratitude is a neurochemical event. Shall we try exhaling and holding the breath out? So I've still got my hands on my ribs. I'm going to breathe in first. Exhale. If you want to, you can do the Mula Bandha, that's squeezing the perineum, which is the floor of the pelvis. And exhale, squeeze your genitals. And hold the breath out. Okay, so this builds desire, and it also builds one-pointed intention. Soon nothing's going to matter but the inhalation. 3, 2, 1, breathe in, and just take a moment with that sense of simple gratitude for living, for breathing. Good. So I have a presentation, and we'll get started on it, I hope. Let's see. Share screen. Here it is. Good. So this is our final session, and we kind of love this vision of the pranic, or the subtle body, or also called the pranic sheath, that Alex Gray, he does a whole bunch of those kinds of depictions that are kind of useful, I think. Here, and you'll be having this this class to refer to. So I wanted to give you some books that might be useful if you get interested in any of the material we look at tonight, any of the philosophical stuff. These are some the really best books we have. For the recognition by Swami Shantananda. This is about the Pratyabhijna. You'll be learning. This is also a great translation. I mean, Christopher Wallace, we're so glad he's with us on this planet studying these things. The Recognition Sutras. This is the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, also called the Yoga of Delight, Wonder, and Astonishment. I Am That, which is by my guru, Swami Muktananda, and we're going to be learning from that specifically tonight and in depth. This is also a Vijnana Bhairava Tantra translation here. Swami Satyananda, I think it's called, the author, but it's called the Sri Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, The Ascent. Then Kundalini, The Secret of Life, and Breath Sweeps Mind for some great aphoristic short pieces on Zen. Okay? Just wanted to give you that so for your future. So tonight we're going to review some of the importance of vagal nerve tone, which is becoming a very interesting topic in medicine because it's about well-being, and how this particular marker for well-being is implicated in when you don't have it in a lot of the chronic diseases that we're suspect to that we are having in our culture. And so we want to see that simple breathing can increase our vagal nerve tone. We'll understand what that is, just to review it. We're going to review that prana is omnipresence. So that it's not just the breath we breathe, it's pervasive in everything. And when we understand that, that's how we use breath to go into non-dual awareness. And we all want that. It's a great attainment for a human consciousness, and it's freedom and liberation, and it is called immortality. Samskaras and vasanas, which we spoke about last time, and I think have a lot of interest for us and usefulness to us as we begin to be able to identify them as an obstruction to our experience of the absolute, and how breathing and meditative practices remove those things. Then we're going to look at pratyabhishna, which we looked at a little bit, which is that recognition philosophy. And you see that the foundation of recognition philosophy in all the different mystical traditions, which are about you already have everything that is attained in spiritual perfection, but the goal and the process is one of recognition of it, not of obtaining it, which you already have. It sounds kind of like, what do you mean I already have it? I don't feel like I already have it. Well, the recognition gives you realization. It's as if you have $1 million in the bank that you suddenly realize you have. That's the feeling. And then that we're going to review the Sushumna Nadi, the importance of that central channel, and which has everything to do with why alignment is emphasized in most meditative systems, such as in Buddhism and in, of course, in yogic systems. Okay. So then we're going to dive into the holy, supremely sacred Vijnana Bhairava Tantra and the Kularnava Tantra. And you know, I emphasize sacredness because the feeling of the sacred is a scaffolding and an elevating fuel, which gives us the ability to ascend to these higher states. And without that feeling and reverence of the sacred, I'm not sure how to get there. Maybe people do it, but I can't tell you how to do it. So that's what I'm recommending together. Okay, so let's look at vagal nerve tone a little bit. Oh, first, this is a beautiful quote which kind of says it all by Thich Nhat Hanh. Breath is the bridge which connects life to consciousness, which unites your body to your thoughts. Wherever your mind becomes scattered, use your breath as the means to take hold of your mind again. And that's what he did. That's what Thich Nhat Hanh does and did to become the liberated, world-changing being that he is. Almost all of his statements have to do with breath awareness and with recentering himself again and again, using it. And that's what we're going to do. Enhancing vagal tone. So remember what we just did when we breathed into our ribs. Here we go again. Here's our review slide. Okay, then what's going on? This is the breath is the bridge which connects life to consciousness, which unites your body and your thoughts. Wherever your mind becomes scattered, use your breath as the means to take hold of your mind again. I'm going to do that right now and ground myself. You know, when something like that happens and I have all my friends with me, you get anxious and you stop fully breathing because you don't want to be here. So you kind of fully inhale. Good. Now we're breathing to enhance vagal tone. Thank you for telling me what was going on there, Mika. All right, we're on together. Good. Breathing deeply immediately relaxes the body because it stimulates the vagus nerve, which runs from the neck to the abdomen and is in charge of turning off the fight or flight. So the full inhalation is a way that we can transform an anxious moment, which I just had, to getting back on track. And so taking a full inhalation sometimes can be enhanced with that little bit of breath holding. So if you'll do that with me now, you can inhale through the nose, hold it in, and exhale through the nose. Good. And I want us to do that one more time because the main thing to do besides the mechanics of it is to notice what happens to the mind, okay? Because that's what I really want to emphasize with breath technique. Do the thing, but don't get involved in the mechanics. Actually get involved in what it does to the mind state, if anything. So we're going to breathe through our nose, hold the breath in, and release through the nose. And notice your state of awareness, if anything, if it's changed. So here's Stephen Porges, and he's the one that we credit for developing this theory, which he calls polyvagal theory. There's a reason he calls it polyvagal, because there's more than one vagus nerve. He calls it the nerve of compassion that links the brain to the heart, lungs, throat, and gut. So it is the body-mind connection. We are understanding now the neurochemistry behind the body-mind spirit connection. And if you want to know more about that, you can read or even just watch YouTubes of Stephen Porges explaining it. So this gives us an understanding and a grounding, a scientific grounding on why the breath technique changes our state of awareness and makes us, as he calls it, nerve of compassion. It's also the nerve of courage. You're getting into your guts. You are able to rise to the occasion using breath. And the fight or flight is reactive. When we're in parasympathetic, that's the kind of part of the nervous system that's relaxing, you get mindful, you get choice making. Shall I say this or shall I say that? Shall I react to that or shall I not? But when you're in fight or flight, one is reactive. And a lot of times that's maladaptive to the situation. And so we're learning how not to let that happen. Now this is the last bit that's important for us. The strength of the vagus response is vagal tone, and every time you breathe in, the heart beats faster. When you breathe out, the heart rate slows, okay? So this is why the long exhalation is heart rate lowering. This is maybe why chanting, and especially chanting like Om and Gregorian chants, which involve a breath in and then a very long exhalation. And it changes the consciousness of the people who are doing it. And it eventually makes them feel ecstasy and one with the universe. That's how deep the compassion of the vagal tone can bring us. Now, the thing is, the variability regulated by the vagus nerve, which is active when you breathe out, but quiescent when you breathe in, that is called heart rate variability. And that's an important new marker for a person's future health and longevity. So if you have good heart rate variability, which you do when you have good vagal tone, which you do when you relax yourself with breathing, you're going to live longer. You're not going to succumb to the chronic diseases that take people out in our culture early on. This is called heart rate variability. So in sympathetic fight or flight mode, the variation between heart rate rates, it's the strangest thing, but it means that your heart rate is staccato and it doesn't have the variation. And strangely enough, in a relaxed sympathetic state, the variation between breaths is high. So there's more variation between the beats, and this is a greater cardiovascular fitness and more resilience to stress. And that's what we have to be right now. This is why I want you to learn these things, because we're in a time of great change, and change is stressful, and adapting to change is what evolution is. But what we're going to do is learn to have the strength and the calm to stay afloat across the storm using breathing. Okay, vagal activity is highest and heart rate lowest when you're exhaling. That's why I put Om here, because if you do Om, I tell you, if you Om'd every day for 20 minutes, you'd probably experience enlightenment states a lot of the time, but very few people are willing to do that. But it's a very good thing to do. We used to do Oms for very long periods in the ashram, and you'd get great ecstatic experiences and visions. So if you want that, Om for quite a while. Okay, so now we're reviewing the poem that we looked at every time we worked together, which is from the Prashna Upanishad or Upanishad. Prana burns as fire and shines as the sun. Prana rains as the cloud. Prana blows as the wind and crashes as thunder in the sky. Prana is the earth. Prana has form and no form, and prana is immortality. And we had said each time that what the poet is saying, what the seer is saying, is that prana is all the elements of creation, from soup to nuts, from the gross to the most subtle. And by following prana, especially as it is gifted to us as breath, we can go from the gross to the subtle, and from the finite to the infinite. And that is that it gives us a method and a vehicle for that, and a tried and true. So we remember that. Now, when you go for a walk, if you're allowed to, and you look at the grass and you look at the wind and you look at the sun, and the water, if you're lucky to be by water, know that you're looking at various iterations of this cosmic substance, which is prana, and prana is conscious. That is another realization that realized beings have. All of this is conscious. And when you know that, it really changes things in a good way. Now, I have a beautiful Ouroboros that one of our dear students, Dara Hart, made, and I wanted to share it. She sent me this. It's just exquisite, and it has quite a symbol here. And this, we're going to use this later to understand the space between the breaths. But remembering that, why is prana or breath such a great thing to focus on as a meditator? Because it's neutral, it's non-hierarchical. You remove yourself from hierarchical environments when you focus on your breath. And it's non-judgmental, it's unconditional, it's pure, it's unlimited. So you're now plowing your attention into something which has no boundaries. And in that way, your awareness begins to have no boundaries. And it's foundational. So it is the substructure of everything. So it's simple. The breath is simple. So when we go to the breath for meditation, we simplify. Even today, I couldn't remember a name, somebody famous. It was actually Josephine Baker. I couldn't remember. I knew if I just meditate, when I came out of meditation, the name came to my head. And so when you have a problem, when you have something you can't remember, don't try to remember it. Don't struggle on the surface. Dive into the depths using your breath, and you'll get that pearl, the treasure that you get from going to the depths with breath awareness. Okay. So we had a little fun last time, and I'm so excited that we can have these concepts, which are the kinds of concepts which remove concepts. So now we're in the tantric land of paradox, and samskaras and vasanas. And we were saying that samskaras are deep impressions in the subtle body, but vasanas are more surface, but that doesn't mean that they're not incredibly powerful shapers of our reality. And once we get to recognize them, we can remove their power to some extent of shaping our experience of the world, but especially of our experience of ourself. Okay, let's look at what they are. Okay, vasanas are conditioning, and they're cultural conditioning, tendencies, unconscious beliefs, and limiting habits of mind. Before last week, I think we talked about a sort of a emblematic vasana, which was that before Roger Bannister in the 1930s ran a 4-minute mile, it was understood you can't do that. It's humanly impossible. And because that was an accepted limit on human potential, no one did until this one guy did it. And after that, so many people could do it, thousands. And so it turns out that our culture tells us what's possible in a human life. And we have to look at our culture as it is now. You know, there was a time, a renaissance, when humanism, it became, this celebration of what it is to be human and what the potentials are. And from that, we got the Enlightenment, the Enlightenment that happened in the 18th century, they called it that. So we're now in a culture, do we have the reverence and the, at least if we're going to condition ourselves, can we at least say being a human being has infinite potential? But here's the more important vasana that we have to release in order to obtain or become realized. And from Ramana Maharshi, I love our saints. You know, we got to make friends with saints. They're, you know, you could just stare at them and they'll talk to you. Ramana Maharshi said, the greatest obstacle to enlightenment is getting past the delusion that you are not already enlightened. And that goes with that recognition theme, which means the ability to recognize what you already are, you know. But, you know, it sounds like kind of, it sounds boring. Like, so what? I recognize what I am. No, what if you recognized that you are infinite? What if you recognized that you are as vast as the universe? That's not boring, okay? That's what happens in states of intense recognition. But we're covered with all these dulling ideas that we get from our culture a lot and from our, you know, various conditioning. So that's what yoga is about, removing those conditionings from our consciousness. Remember, breath sweeps the mind. And what it is sweeping, when we use our breath, we're sweeping, your thoughts will come up and you sweep them away using your breath and your mantra, which we're going to get into. And let's just sweep our central channel right now with a few inhalations and exhalations. Sweep from top to bottom and back. Good. Keep doing it. You know, your mind isn't only up in this part of your being, it's all throughout the body, particularly along the central channel from the floor of the pelvis, which is the perineum, to the crown of the head. Sweep that mind. Good. All right. So here we have one of our students last week asked a good question. She said, are samskaras always bad or negative? And I recalled from the Pratyabhishna Hridayam, this aphorism, samadhi samskaravati vyutane bhuyo bhuyas chidai something marsha nidyodita samadhi labha. I really like that word. So chidaikya, the word I love is nityodita, which means infinitely arising. The permanent attainment of samadhi is established by contemplating one's identity with consciousness again and again following meditation, which is full of the samskaras of samadhi. So remember how we were talking last week about the prayatna sadhaka, that the effort, that the sadhaka is one who makes an effort. What is the effort? It's that contemplation of your identity with consciousness. And if you say, well, I don't know what you talk about consciousness, it's too hard. Talk about your identity with prana, okay? Because breath, prana is consciousness. So if you focus on your prana and you become aware that you are nothing but prana, that's good too. And that all of this is prana, okay? But that's the kind of effort that we have to make as seekers. Okay, we don't just meditate and then go out and have a hot dog and wish that life was better. You have to go out, and if you're gonna have a hot dog, see the hot dog as the vibration of consciousness. You have to do it. That's the effort. And so that you'll see that this is embedded in the texts, especially of Tantra. And this is called disciples' grace. Okay, in the Pratyabhishna Hridayam, it is said we are little microcosms of the universe and of the universal power. So we have all of the power of the divine in a contracted form. And one of the powers of the divine is redemption, okay? And you make your own redemption when you start to see your reality through the lens of it being all one substance of consciousness or divinity. Good. So now we're reviewing that idea of recognition, which is called pratyabhishna. And, you know, have to link everything that we do both to breathing, because this is called the art of breathing, and to the energy body. So the when we talked about how prana is the light of the sun and the wind and the water, that's recognition. Again, that's your effort, okay, to make the recognition of this one thing, which is divine and which you can contact through your breath. But when I say it's divine, it's aware, okay? So it's called pratyabhishna. And even in this Gospel of Thomas, and there's a few other statements in there which have to do with recognition. Here, the Lord said, recognize what is before you, and what is hidden from you will be revealed. Think of what is before you. It's your breath. It's the thing that never left you. It started when you came here. It's going to be the last thing that when you leave. So because it's all pervasive and ubiquitous, we don't recognize it. So that's one of the things. If you start to recognize the breath, you're really on the way home. He also said something like, the kingdom of heaven is all around you, but you don't recognize it in that gospel, which is an interesting one. Okay, so remember how last week we looked at the lack of recognition of the great Leonardo painting that was sold for 10,000 British pounds, and then it was sold for 450 million when it was recognized, and everyone, oh, it's a Leonardo. And then we talked about how Van Gogh had no recognition when he was alive, and now everybody's like falling all over themselves with appreciation of his art. And I'm very skeptical, because I realize we are only appreciating it because we were told. We have the vasanas, the culture says, oh, that's special, you know, and a few of us may have the ability to see the genius there, but most of us are just going along. I put myself in that category. And here we have Joshua Bell, who played in the subway, and nobody recognized him as the greatness that he is, and he was very hurt by that. So this is the vasanas are the cultural conditionings. Well, the guy's in the subway, he can't be any good. I'm going to keep walking, right? Oh, I paid $200 for the ticket. He must be great. Look what great taste I have. That, you know, this is vasana. We don't want that. And I put Yoda here because when Luke Skywalker was told that he was going to go meet the great master, and he gets into the forest and there's this funny little weird creature, he can't recognize that as the great master. And so the moment when he does recognize is something that we should understand about our own life. That it's providing us with opportunity after opportunity, with great insightful moments, and we may not be recognizing them. This is the guru of the universe, the guru of your life. Here we have Zen master Joshu Roku, who's from a long time ago, and he had a teaching like this. A monk asked, "Who is my teacher?" And how we all want, "Who's my guru?" And the master said, "The clouds rising out of the mountains, the streams entering the valley without a sound." The monk said, "I didn't ask about them." The master said, "Though they are your good teachers, you do not recognize them." So when we do breath awareness, when we revere our inhalations and our exhalations, we're going to start to be able to see around us the teachings that are emanating from reality, with the all-pervasive guru, which is always seeking to teach us. Good. So this is a nice story, and I think it's relevant to this whole Pratyabhishna review that we're doing. Excuse me. So this diamond is a real diamond. It's called the centenary diamond, but it looks like it's so big you can't believe it's real, right? And this is the story that I'm going to tell you now of the Chintamani, which is the wish-fulfilling gem. And it's especially relevant tonight because when we go forward tonight and we learn the Hamsa mantra, the Hamsa mantra is as valuable or more as this extraordinary diamond. But this is what happened, and you'll see this in the Yoga Vasishta, and this is the story of the Chintamani. So there was a young yogi, and he was doing all these practices for some years, and then he heard about the Chintamani, the wish-fulfilling gem. And there was, some tantras that he could do, and some breath practices, and if he did them right, and some mantras, he would say he's going to manifest this wish fulfilling gem, right? So when you get this gem, you get everything. So he sits down, he starts some of the practices, and boom, in front of him is this, what you see. Now the guy goes, could this be real? I I haven't been doing this, and I'm not a very good person. I've been doing a lot of bad things, and I'm not much of a yogi, and I only said the mantras a little bit. Could that be a real thing? I'm not quite. Should I take it or shouldn't I? Should I? What if I didn't get a hold of it? Will it still be? Boom! It disappeared. Okay, and that's the end of the story. It's kind of an awful thing. So clearly, the guy's doubts, okay, got way in his way. Self-doubt was the main thing, because he had these ideas that if he was this, and this kind of person, he wasn't this kind of person who would be worthy of the wish-fulfilling gem. So vasanas get in our way, and they tell us whether we're worthy or not. In a way, that's why we have to do all these disciplines and practice, so that we can convince ourselves we're worthy to receive the gem. Now, with Tantra, they tell you, hey, kid, you really don't have to do all that stuff if you can just accept that you are worthy, okay? But that's the Tantric way. And you have to be developed sometimes to receive it. So sometimes you just force yourself to do years and years and years of sadhana, and then you say, by God, I'm willing and ready to receive this enlightening gem, and to hold it with reverence, because I've put all this investment into it. That's one of the reasons why it works. Because if you don't think it's valuable, it's nothing but a paperweight. So this is the importance of pratyabhijna, which is recognition. So this is from Abhinavagupta, who's one of our tantric masters from the Shaivite tradition. And remember, a lot of what we're saying is a way of seeing. Remember the kurma prana, the prana with which we see? We want to see through the obstacles and the doubts and the imagined inadequacies, the imagined unworthiness. So this is what Abhinavagupta said, seeing everything as one's own consciousness, one drinks the wine of bliss. No other aim of life remains to be accomplished after the rise of satisfaction attained through such awareness. He definitely was in that experience. So it's when we see everything as one's own consciousness, what we've done is that the split between subject and object has fallen away, and all that we're experiencing we know is our own being, okay? That's the pearl of great price, and it costs everything you have. It costs all your doubts, it costs all your sense of I'm not the world, and I'm better than that person, and I'm worse than that person. You have to pay that price. You're going to be emptying your wallet of inadequacy and comparison and not good enough and better than, the whole wallet. So this is what happens, and you become drinking the wine of bliss. Okay, so, but guess what? We can go with our breath to this experience. Okay, that what's looking through your eyes right now is the glance of Shiva. Okay, so we ascribe all this ego to the seer, right? This poor little person that went through so much, you know. I tend to emphasize my suffering and you know, my inadequacy, you know, my hopes and dreams and all this stuff. But remember, if we want to drink the wine of bliss, we have to pay that price, where we go beyond that and know that what's looking through your eyes is the divine. What else could it be? And if we remember the very first aphorisms from the Yoga Sutra, yoga's chittam vritti nirodha, yoga is the stilling of the chittam, of the mind stuff. Tada drashtu svarupe vasthanam, drashtu is the seer. Then the seer will abide in her own nature. So taking a moment with our eyes open, As you keep your eyes open, you can gaze at anything, any spot, but then be aware of your breath. As the mind becomes quiet, you start to know that that which is seeing is pouring through your eyes is the consciousness of Shiva or God. Good. We'll do that a little bit more with the breath technique later. Good. You know, when you see God within, you see God without. I call it God. You can call it consciousness, whatever works for you. But you'd think, well, this is going to make me very prideful. But the fact is, the more you see the absolute within, the more humbling it is, really. And the more you see it out. Okay. So people who hate other people, you know, there's a deficit of love within themselves for themselves. Hate to tell you. So make sure that we're going to work on that as we go. So that's the glance of Shiva. And we love this this photograph of the Big Bang that was made in the laboratories in Long Island, which will and Brookhaven. Okay, and they said, oh, this is what the Big Bang looked like, which is amazing because there are 12 segments, and there are 12. This looks just like the heart chakra, only it's blue, whereas the heart chakra is red. And the weird thing about the heart chakra is it has these 12 petals, as does the clock, as does the calendar, as does the you know, astrological chart. And there's something about the 12, and then that hole in the middle is the where the light gets in. Okay, now we're going to understand that a little bit more as we go forward. But just a little bit more, this is from a wonderful Swami who was ordained by my Guru Swami Muktananda, and who is in Australia, named Swami Shankarananda. Our essential awareness is always pure, but the physical, mental, emotional sheath that overlays it has acquired knots and contractions. Our vision has to be cleansed so that it may return to pure awareness. That is the process of spirituality. It's very true. And part of it, like I said, is not just the hard work of cleansing, it's knowing that you are pure. It's knowing that you are divine and good. You know, you could throw out and pay the price of all the bad feelings one has about oneself, because believe me, you're doing the world a favor. And you don't do the world any favor at all when you dislike yourself, because you end up projecting that. So be good to the world, love yourself, and see yourself as good. This is a beautiful shloka from the Guru Gita, and it has to do with the glance, the importance of the view. May the divine glance of the Guru ever dwell upon me. It creates all worlds. It is the central pillar supporting the stage of all worlds. It creates all time. Its only goal is to lead souls to liberation. It is Satchitananda. So that glance of the Guru is actually emanating in you, and we're going to find out that one of its locus loci is the crown of the head. Okay, and it's the sun in the crown of the head, which is causing you to grow toward the light. Okay, so we're going to review the Sushumna Nadi, because these are the important features of this course. The Sushumna is our central channel, and we spoke a lot in the beginning about the importance of alignment. Okay, the physical alignment with your center that we enforce when we do Hatha Yoga. When you do Hatha Yoga, you're doing everything so symmetrically so that the center becomes implicit and you become aware of it. So this is from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Sushumna becomes the main road for the passage of prana. The mind becomes free of all attachments, and death is then evaded. Okay, this experience of death being evaded is a state of awareness. It's when you know you're one with the infinite and you feel it. Now, that's from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So here we are again with the Shri Yantra. And this Shri Yantra, if you recall, is actually a depiction of your Sushumna. The very center here is the Sushumna, which threads the chakras. And all these triangles are triangles of light, which are in the chakras. And when you stare at the center of the Shri Yantra, you're looking down a three-dimensional map of your own chariot, they call it. Why do they call it a chariot? Because it's wheels. Those things are wheels. And those filaments of light, those triangles, are in the wheels. So when you align your wheels, as you're going to do right now, just put the back top of your head up, pull the head over, lift the chest, keep your shoulder blades back, and take a breath. And you're breathing to be aware of the axle of the wheels of the chakras. You know the word dukkha from, if you're a Buddhist, meaning suffering, and sukha, which means happiness, ease, and we get our word sugar from it. Dukkha is from the same root as hard. Something's hard. So dukkha and sukha were two words that were used for the placement of an axle in a wheel. If the axle isn't centered, then you got dukkha, which was a bad ride, a bumpy ride. And when the axle was perfectly centered, it was sukha. And in that same way, if we center our own axle using breath and various other kinds of practices, we will have a smoother ride. Okay, let's center our wheel right now. All the wheels, the wheels of the chakras. Okay, so pull your shoulder blades towards your spine, bring your chin towards your throat, and smooth the axle all the way to the floor of the pelvis and all the way to the crown of the head with your breathing. Perfect. In your mind, the very top of your head and the perineum, the floor and the ceiling, or the heaven and earth, are juxtaposed. Okay, and there's a triangle in the crown, and there's a triangle in the perineum, and they're facing in opposite directions. So they make you that perfect Star of David, which is the Shield of David, which is the alignment. And I want you to think now, because we're about to get into this mantra, but think it in English. I am. Good. A lot to cover. So again, the Sushumna from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the importance of it. As long as the prana does not enter and flow in the middle channel, and as long as the mind does not become absorbed in spontaneous meditation, so long all the talk of knowledge and wisdom is merely nonsensical babbling. This is Fatma Rama, who did the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and he was like, obviously no nonsense. He's sick and tired of all the pontificating about, scripture and everything people think they know. And he's saying that's all very fine, but you have to have this thing going on that's within you, which is this centering, okay? And all that other talk is talk. So we have a reference to this central channel in the concept of the Triveni Sangam. And the Triveni Sangam means the confluence of three rivers. And you can see how the two rivers are actually coming together in Allahabad. Here's the Ganga, it's blue, and the Yamuna, those are just sacred rivers. Where's the third one? The third one's called Saraswati. Well, you don't see it, but Saraswati represents the center, okay? So these are the Triveni, the three rivers. There's the Ganga, the Yamuna, and then the Saraswati. Well, it turns out from satellite imaging, they can see there really was once a river that was where they say the Saraswati is. And so that's interesting in itself. But here we have a reference to the Saraswati, to the the meeting rivers. I wanted to show you from a Shaivite poet. The rich will make temples for Shiva. What shall I, a poor man, do? My legs are pillars, my body the shrine, the head a cupola of gold. Oh, listen, O Lord of the meeting rivers, things standing shall fall, but the moving ever shall stay. This is Basava, 12th century, and he was a Shaivite like you and I, and he was poor, okay, but not poor in realization. But so his physical body, as your physical body, is the temple. That's what it is. That's these very Shaivites refused to go in a temple. They were forbidden from it because they said you're insulting the God within when you go into a temple or a church or a synagogue. Okay, but here he says the Lord of the meeting rivers, and he's talking about what we're talking about. And he says something else about impermanence. Things standing shall fall, but the moving ever shall stay. So when you align with the truth of impermanence, with the flow, which is the flowing river, you're in the eternal. Here's Saraswati, the goddess. Okay, Saraswati is flowing through you. Her name means she who flows. Swa is self. The flow. Sara is slow. The flow of the self. And she's always shown by a river, and she always has a stringed instrument for the vibration of the Udgita, which is the Om, which is the arising vibration. She's the goddess of music, speech, learning. And here, this looks like a deck of cards. That's literature or a book. And mantra. You see her hand. She's holding the mantra japa mala. And neatly too, she's on a rock. Now, some of these other gods and goddesses sit on various thrones, but the rock represents groundedness, the reality, science. Okay, so when you see Saraswati, know that you're looking at a symbol of your own central channel where the wisdom is arising and where your brilliance and your genius comes from, where your inspiration arises, and you can have her in your environment to remind you. It's always funny because the energy that flows in the central channel is always considered feminine. So here we have an interesting poem about the same kind of energy. You know, the name of our course is Prana, breathing, Prana and the energy body. And I love this very much because this is from St. John of the Cross. And these poems that he wrote when he was encaged by his own Carmelite, I think was his own order. They were mad at him because he was going against the grain. They put him in a cage for a few years, and he suffered terribly, and he was imprisoned, and for blasphemy. You can see, if you read this with me, that his ideas are not exactly orthodox, but they're very similar to what we've been talking about. So here we go. He wrote this when he was in that prison. How well I know that flowing spring in black of night. The eternal fountain is unseen. How well I know where she has been in black of night. I do not know her origin, none. Yet in her all things begin in black of night. I know that nothing is so fair, and earth and firmament drink there in black of night. I know that none can wade inside to find her bright bottomless tide in black of night. Her shining never has a blur. I know that all light comes from her in black of night. I know her streams converge and swell and to nourish people, skies, and hell in black of night. I know the stream whose birth is in this source, I know has a gigantic force in black of night. Listen to this, very interesting. The stream from but these two proceeds, yet neither one I know precedes in black of night. The eternal fountain is unseen in living bread that gives us being in black of night. She calls on all mankind to start, to drink her water, though in dark, for black is night. O living fountain that I crave, in bread of life I see her flame, in black of night. So he was meditating and he experienced these converging streams. And all of this poem is very, very tantric. And he got in big trouble for it. Okay, so here we're still on the Sushumna Nadi, okay? Madhya Vikasa Chidananda Labha. By the expansion of the center, bliss consciousness is acquired. Even now, if you just sit here, move your sit bones from side to side and expand your base mentally, okay? Just let yourself feel more proprioception, okay? So more information coming from where the floor is touching your body, and let your crown of your head rise, and you're going to expand the center. So take a breath. And as if you are a surfer, you're in the tube, okay? It's tubular. Now, if you were surfing, you wouldn't let your attention vary. So I want you to keep your attention on the breath like a surfer on a surfboard. I know some of you have done surfing. So let's do some surfing now through our central channel. Keep the crown of your head up and the perineum down. One more wave. We can open our eyes. We'll put our surfboard under our arm and we'll get on the beach for the next while. Okay, so we'll go back for another round soon. The central channel, which we have different names for, the Sushumna, the Madhya Nadi, the middle nadi, also called the Madhya Dasha, the middle path, situated in the middle space, is as slender as a lotus stem. The divine is revealed to one who meditates on the emptiness within it. We kind of just did that. Well, let's just, scroll back a little bit. The divine is revealed to one who meditates on the emptiness within it. So what we just did, if you do it enough, starts to become revelatory. Okay, if you believe this stuff, when you were handed, the 100-carat diamond, you didn't think it was a paperweight. Okay, if you take it and you understand it and you believe it, that it will reveal the divine. Okay, it will. And so the emptiness, we're going to find out a little bit more about this feeling of emptiness, but let's just do now as we put the crown of the head up. And remember the axle, okay? So this is an axle made of light that's within you. So, or you call it the prana axle. We're going to see prana and light are the same thing. So breathe down to the floor. And do that a few more times. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to get into our Shaiva Tantra, okay, we're right on time for it. Here's our friend Shiva. I hope you get to love him. So he's a major hippie. Here you can't see, but he's famously had dreadlocks, and he is by the river there, and he doesn't bother with clothes very much, and he always has a trident, and the trident represents the triadic. There's a lot of triangles or trinities in Tantra, which is also called trika, okay? And it's called trika to represent this tendency to put things into threes. And the most easy way for us to understand this is what we loved as kids, which was the three bears. Mama bear's her chair is too soft, Papa bear's too hard, baby is just right. The place where the opposites meet is perfection. And the triangle is a cognitive device which enables us to understand the unity behind duality. So there are things that look like they're two, but they meet somewhere. And in that place where they meet is the perfection. So that is how we understand non-duality in this incredibly multifarious world. It's one of the ways. So there's a lot of symbolism that we like. Hi, Shiva, glad to see you. And he has the mudra of don't be afraid, okay? He's like utterly reassuring, okay? Because when you get the feeling, you know how our darling St. John of the Cross called it the bread of life? You know, the feeling of oneness is the bread of life. The unity experience is the bread of life. When it vibrates, it soothes every particle of anxiety you ever had, and it comforts you deeply. That's really where we're headed and what we're going to be experiencing. You can look him in the eye and be thankful. Okay, remember how we just met Basava, I think it was, who talked about the Lord of the Meeting Rivers. Well, these guys were called Lingayats, okay? And we're going to be Lingayats tonight. And Lingayats means the Linga worshippers, okay? They were a radical religious sect that arose in the 12th century. And by the way, they had equality of all of men and women, castes, and everything else. So there was no hierarchy, and they were really kind of wild and crazy. Now, you could all throughout India, there are these things. These are linga, Shiva linga, but I've put in a couple that are European. This is an old linga from the Mohenjo-daro, from very ancient. You probably have studied a little bit if you've been taking some of the courses offered by Embodied Philosophy. And this one's actually from 200 or 300 BC, looks amazing. So there's these worship of the phallic stone. Funny enough, this one's in Ireland. It's called the Stone of Destiny, the Leafal. It's on the hill called the Hill of Tara. I was there, it was wonderful to see. And this one is in Sweden. So you see this all over Europe. So this is the worship of the phallic energy. Now we're getting into Tantra, which is the uprising energy, okay? Remember how much we enjoy the feeling of energy moving up through our sushumna, our central channel, and expanding in the crown of the head? That's the metaphor. And here's a aphorism from the Shiva Sutra, Udyamo Bhairava, which means the divine is uprising. Some translation, Bhairava, or God, is upsurge, God is arising, or the effort to arise is divine. And I like that because, you know, the plants rise up, and when we get up out of bed, we arise, and it takes effort. I mean, it's no effort at all to stay lying down, okay? That takes no effort, but the effort to arise is divine. And you're doing it now as you come to this class. So there's something divine about that. Maybe it is you. Here's a wonderful one from Alama Prabhu, just some poems from the Lingayats so that we can experience it's called the prana linga, okay? The linga made of prana that's in your being, that's going up through your center channel. Shall we listen? My body, I have made a garden, my mind a spade. I have dug up illusion's weeds, broken up the clods of worldliness, harrowed the earth and sown spirit's seed. This is effort, okay? When you breathe, when you're breathing, you're sowing seed, okay? You're putting the seeds of consciousness into the earth plane. You're making it's work. The 1,000-petaled lotus, crown of the head, is my well, my water wheel, the breath. From my subtle nerve, that's the sushumna, or it's actually within the sushumna, is called the chitrini. I have channeled the water, and to keep out the 5 bulls of sense that might trample my crops, I have set up patience and poise as a fence. Behold, O Lord of caves, night and day I have lain awake to protect my tender plants. Talk about the effort, the spiritual effort you and I make to cultivate enlightenment. And you see that tonight, you know, we used fire to talk about the energy within the Jyotirlinga, the linga of fire. But now we're talking about the water as being, you know, the fountain. Okay, because you know the prana is when it moves in, you know, when it moves uninhibitedly, when you've removed vasanas and it starts to really move, it does feel like water, and it's slaking the thirst of your spiritual being. Here's one from Alama Prabhu. The linga of the breath, which is the prana linga, breaks all rules and grows unorthodox. And that's really what happens, because as you break out through the vasanas and stuff, you might obey the rules, but you kind of see them as absurd. So this does happen for some enlightened beings. They become very unorthodox or unconventional. But that linga, that's so much fun. And we're going to be oblating it and actually stroking it with our breath. I hate to tell you. So this is Kashmir Shaivism. We were just with the Lingayats. They're not technically Kashmiri. And here I love this picture. This is my ideal life right here. She's got her own hut, a couple of deer studying the text. There's her Shiva Linga, little thing to a river there. I hope she's waiting. She'll have a visitor, but it looks nice, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. Are you ready? We're going to study now, finally, the yoga, the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. I've held it till the end. Hold on. So if you may have heard of it, so just bear with me if I describe it for anybody who's never heard of it. Vijnana is the wisdom. Bhairava is in Shaivism or Shivaism. A lot of times the epithet for God is Bhairava. And Bhairava means fearful, okay? Because, you know, if you know the word for fear is bhaya, and abhaya means fearless. And why is it fearful? Because this aspect of God is the void, is the emptiness, okay? And remember when we looked at an eye, we had the iris and then the pupil. The pupil of the eye is the emptiness, and as it expands, as we expanded our own sushumna, the light gets in through that emptiness. Okay, so as we turn our attention to void, we get insight. Light pours in. So we're the void is frightening though, because in the end it's quite frightening to let yourself become immersed in the void. So what you do, and this is what I do, is that you make it the beloved, because the void is conscious. Guess what? It's aware. And it's as if God doesn't have a form, but will take on a form. But no one wants to see God as God really is, which is formless, and it's too scary. But so if you're willing, you know, allow yourself to go into the void, which we're going to have some techniques for right away. So this is a key text of the Trika. Remember I said Trika, the threes of Kashmir Shaivism, the conversation or discourse between Bhairava and his consort Bhairavi. They're so close, they only have a letter difference in their name. 112 tantric meditation methods or centering techniques, which are called dharanas. If you recall from the Yoga Sutras, dharana is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. And Desha Bandha Chittasya Dharana. Dharana binds consciousness to the here and now, to a certain place. So it starts out with this. Bhairavi, the goddess says, I have heard the songs of creation emerging from the union of our 2 energies. Bhairava says, my lover, you contain me. You are my very soul, my being. The form and the formless need each other, okay? So without spaciousness, all the molecular matter, if you would call it form, would be compressed into a tiny little spot, right? We need formlessness. There's a lot more to the understanding of the essential nature of the void as being part of our reality. But let's suffice to say, form and formless need each other, and they're madly in love. They could never be separate, okay? Because without each other, they don't exist. There's the black hole that was photographed a few months ago. So we are remembering that that's what that is. You know, the black holes are considered to be wombs of creation. Okay, so this is, here's the diamond, okay? It's 100-carat diamond. You might think it's a paperweight, but this is the jewel that is the what my guru wrote about in his book, I Am That, was the ultimate teaching that he offered. We're going to practice. The goddess of creation goes on ceaselessly expressing herself upward in the form of exhalation and downward in the form of inhalation. By steadily fixing the mind on either of the two spaces between the breaths, one expresses the state of fullness of Bhairava. Okay? So a couple of important things here is that this thing that you're breathing in and out, that you don't, that you go another day, another dollar, no big deal. It's the goddess of creation that you've been given to manifest and create with, to honor and to explore. Okay, that's what you've been given through the breath. So now you've got recognition. Okay, ceaselessly expressing yourself upward in the form of exhalation and downward in the form of inhalation. As I've said before, if your inhalation seems to go down, I mean up, and your exhale goes, doesn't matter. What it means is that the breath is constantly making a vertical descent into reality and ascent into the absolute all the time. Okay, now our job is we're going to start to look for the moments between the in-breath and the out-breath. That's the trika. That's the place where the god and the goddess, the yin and the yang meet, the perfection. Okay, now here's our dear fellow student, Dara Hart, who gave me this amazing artwork today. And she did it, and I love it because this to me shows the space between the breaths, and she put a little triangle in there. She's a tantric yogini, a well-known, actually, tantric yogini teacher, but also apparently a great artist and a songwriter. It's amazing. Lots of creativity. So I often use this picture to show the space between the breaths, because this is the moment that Michelangelo showed, where in our Bible, God puts together some clay and then he breathes into Adam's nostrils to make him alive. And this is the way that Michelangelo depicted it. And we're thinking of this here as the space between the breaths. But what's here, a couple of things is, it's clear Michelangelo had been studying brains, and he made God coming out of the human brain and out of the frontal lobes, which is reason, or the third eye, where you can also see the union of opposites. And so he's reaching, giving breath, and Adam's not doing a whole lot of effort there. If you see, it does look like Adam has to reach a little harder. Let's call Adam the out breath. Sometimes we have to reach with our exhalation to the absolute. This is a synapse, okay? This is the space. This is where the two things meet. And in the synapse is the meaning, okay? The synapse is the place where the meaning occurs. This is where the connection occurs. And it is the sacred place where the two becomes one. So a little bit more from the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra before we practice it. The breath is exhaled. So now we've been told that we should be focusing on the space between the breaths, but there's more. There's a mantra. The breath is exhaled with the sound sa and inhaled with the sound hum. This is from this text. You may see other teachings where it's exhaled with hum and inhaled with sa, or so. It doesn't matter. I hate to break it to you, but tonight we're using it this way. The breath comes in with sa, is exhaled with sa and inhaled with hum, okay? Thus the individual always recites this mantra, hum sa. So do it now, just inhale thinking hum, exhale sa. Good. Such japa is quite easy to accomplish. This is difficult only for the ignorant. You see how they get a little testy, some of these teachers? So this is, sometimes you'll see a swan as the symbol of Hamsa, because the swan is called a Hamsa bird. But a swan is able in myth to drink the cream out of the lake. If you pour cream into the lake, it can extract the cream. It has supreme discernment, which is viveka, okay? And the swan is also gracefully gliding through life, yet underneath the water, it's making an effort. You can see its fins paddling, you know, and so the swan has a lot of teaching for us. Also, the placement of the neck and the head, which we'll get to when we practice. So just to get into the meaning of it, of course, Hamsa means I am that. So as you say it, it's I am that I am. Now, sometimes when I'm doing Hamsa, I just go to English and I just go I am on the in-breath, I am on the out-breath. Or sometimes I do I on the in-breath and am on the out-breath, or vice versa. But what it means is that if I am the I am is an erasure of the difference between the subject and the object, okay? You probably remember that it is the name of the burning bush, which was given to Moses. The story of Moses is just absolutely amazing. It has so many teachings in it. He didn't want to have to do the liberating work of liberating all those Israelites. He was trying to argue his way out of it. He knew it wasn't going to be fun. It wasn't going to be easy. But he said, okay, if I have to do it, who should I say sent me? And the bush gives his name. He says, this is my name forever. I am the I am. Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Ayah, Asher, Ayah. And I love this because this burning bush looks like a brain. And the crown chakra is the burning bush. And I'm going to prove that to you. First, I have to go past this. Oops, nope, I have to go here. Okay. In a moment, I'm going to prove you about that burning bush thing. But I want you to think that the I am, the Hamsa, is the Sushumna Nadi. Remember? It goes up and down, ceaselessly expresses downward on the inhalation and upward on the exhalation. It forms the Sushumna Nadi, which is the rod and the staff that comforts you. And remember, Moses was given, actually the bush said, what do you have in your hand? He says, I have a stick. Bush says, throw it to the ground, and it became a snake. When you do sun salutation, you go from stick pose to cobra. Your spine is a stick that is also a snake. That's the Sthira Sukham in the Sthira Sukham asana, the stability and the flexibility. So you're possessed of this rod, which is also very wiggly and adaptive, okay? Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So when you go through your life and these hard things we're going through, and we don't know, we have a lot of uncertainty, the Hamsa mantra will be the rod and the staff. Okay, you're going to the name. This is the name, okay? Remember how it says in our prayers, hallowed be thy name, and don't take the name in vain. There's something about the name, okay? Do it, keep it with you, align it with your breath, okay? You will always be in touch. And you know, when it says hallowed be thy name, you want to worship the name. Lot's wife, we don't want to be like her. And that means keep your focus. There's a burning town behind you. Are you going to turn around because you really need to look at all the suffering that you had and that was over there and that other people? No, you're going forward. Don't vary or let your awareness go any place else but centered, okay? That's important. Okay, here's how I'm proving to you the crown chakra. This is from the Guru Gita. Meditate on the Guru who dwells in the lotus surrounded by the divine petals, Hamsa, which reside in all beings and are the cause of the world. In the round space of the thousand-petaled lotus, there's a triangle formed by three lines, A, Ka, and Pa, which has Hum and Sa on two sides. One should remember the guru who is seated in its center. This is in your crown head, okay? Believe me, Hum Sa is up in here. Akatadi Tridekabje Sahasradala Mandale Hamsa Parshva Trikone Cha Smaretan Madikam Guru. Did you think you didn't have a guru? You got one right up here, okay? The sun, which is initiating your growth. I'm going to keep going. There is great joy of the conjunction of the mantra Hamsa, which is like a yajna sacrifice. Resting in it, one becomes identified with the goddess and one attains to Bhairava. We're going to go forward. This is from a poet, Lal Ded. There is no God other than Shiva, no sadhana other than japa, the repetition of the mantra, no technique other than meditation. The seat of Guru Nath is between the incoming and outgoing breaths. Okay? Don't worry. Soham or Hamsa are the same thing. This is an explanation of that, but I'm going to go past it because I want you to see a little more material before we go ahead and meditate with Hamsa. See, the Soham is the feet of the Guru. It's often said that, so you're walking toward your enlightenment with every breath. Okay? Here's what Kabir said. Oh, by the way, so Soham and Hamsa is the same thing. The supracausal realm is vibrating with Soham. There is a land where no doubt nor sorrow have rule, where the terror of death is no more. Remember the bread of life? There the woods of spring are abloom, and the fragrant scent, Soham, is born on the wind. There the bee of the heart is deeply immersed and desires no other joy. That is so true. And the feeling of unity has a sort of a vibratory buzz. It feels buzzy and bubbly. You know, it's like you know how they say drink the bubbly? You're drinking the bubbly when you're breathing Soham or Hamsa. We're going to be doing the Hamsa version. Let me be clear that Soham is how it's described in the Vedas and Hamsa in the Shaivite Tantras, and it simply is a grammatical thing that we're not going to get into, but we're going to use the Hamsa version. Okay, so I want to do Hamsa with you for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to explore for another 5 minutes the Kularnava Tantra, which is so sublime, and then we'll end. So we're going to go to questions at 8, closer to 8:40 than 8:30. Are you ready? Let's stretch. We'll stretch our arms up, move our ribs from side to side. This is your rod and your staff. It's wiggly, it's adaptable, but it's also firm and powerful. And it's with which you are going to part the Red Sea. Take your arms open and part the Red Sea as you open your palms. Good. And we're going to put our thumb and forefinger together and pull the ears back over the shoulders. And you're going to surf with your prana, the goddess of creation, on your surfboard down to the floor of the pelvis. We'll do that a few times without even looking for the space between the breaths. Surfing and then exhaling up. Now start observing the space between the breaths. Look for that moment between the inhalation and the exhalation. Thinking in your own language, I am. With each breath, you are removing another layer of false ego and reminding yourself of your all-pervasive identity. The remembrance of who you are is a service to humanity. Space between the breaths is an entry to the infinite, and you can open your door in that space if you bring love to that moment. Tantra means weaving, so you are weaving that infinite consciousness into your fabric with the breath. You catch hold of the infinite at the end of the inhalation and you weave it with the exhalation. The feeling of the infinite is the breath of life. Try some breath holding. The I am is the rod and the staff that comforts you. When you're ready, we'll put our palms together and we have a little bit more to go. And I have to take my earphones out because they're losing power. So Mika, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me when I do that.
Can you can you say anything? I don't know. Can you say?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. It lost, it does this thing where it's lost power, so it's funny enough. Okay, so that was fun, but here I wanted you to be introduced to the Kalarnava Tantra, which extols the Hamsa mantra in no uncertain terms. It's a very beautiful thing from the Shakta tradition of Tantra, that as I understand it, and there are not a lot of translations of it, but there is one on that website called Shiva Shakti Mandalam. Okay. Ooh, here's a good thing. This is not from the Kalarnava Tantra, but it's kind of in the same direction. In the copulatory yoga that is practiced by the hero and heroine, upward they drive the coach of the breath that has its wheels in regions right and left.
where there they collect the waters of heaven, and never the organs tiring know. So as you go into this way of meditating, there's the sense of intercourse between the inhalation and the exhalation, between the universe and you. And that's a very nice thing. No matter what your orientation is, the interpenetration feeling, which is done with love, kind of is great. And then it drives the coach of the chakras upward to the crown center. Here's the Kularnava Tantra. I'm just going to read some of it. It's so beautiful. And the name for the Kularna, for the Hamsa mantra is called the Urdhvamnaya. Okay, now Anaya is it's a vehicle, and Urdhva means upward. So it's the upward flowing vehicle. Obtaining full knowledge of the Urdhvamnaya from the word of the Guru, you shall attain liberation in this very life according to the mode of scripture. You will be blessed. Where you live, there shall reign plenty, the victory of Shri. The great mantra presiding over the Urdhvamnaya is the Shri Prasadapara mantra, the Hamsa. In this mantra, Ham stands for Shiva, the Purusha, and Sa for Shakti, the Prakriti. Both together make the creation and so are present in each form. Hamsa is the supreme mantra repeated by all jivas or beings. All life, listen to this, all pulsation in creation throbs with this mighty declaration of the truth of Shiva Shakti, the eternal He and the eternal She at play and manifestation. This mantra is the living form of the Shiva Shakti. From Shiva down to the infinitesimal, it pervades the entire creation through the mode of the prana in all beings in the form of inspiration and expiration, in breath and out breath. Without this great mantra rhythm, the worlds would not be. All this creation, mobile and immobile, is textured by this great mantra. As the tree exists subtly in the fig seed, the whole creation of Brahman is held in the great mantra. Though he may do no ritual, the knower of this mantra walks a happy path which not all the followers of Dharma can hope for. It's true. By the repetition of this mantra, the Pashu, the bound soul, becomes Pashupati, the beloved. The creature becomes the Lord. One who knows the truth of this mantra comes to know the truth of both Shiva and Shakti. This, then, is the crest jewel of all mantras, being a form of the supreme reality, standing for Satchit Ananda, constituted of Shiva and Shakti, yielding both enjoyment and liberation, yet without works. This is the supreme mantra, by repetition, by repeating which a human being attains fulfillment without fail. The Guru enters you through the mantra. Kundalini contains all mantra and is awakened quickly by the mantra. I'm going to stop sharing and allow some questions. I have to plug my computer in, so while you think of questions, I'll do that.
Awesome. I do have a few questions collected to the side. So if anyone has any questions, if you want to put it in the chat or maybe raise your hand when you're ready.
I wanted to give you this ultimate mantra that I use. And I also use Om Namah Shivaya, but it's breath centered. So please use it. It's so good. I use it all the time. Okay.
So are you ready for?
I think so, yes.
Okay. So the first question, what's for Becca? The reference that Mary makes to chanting and the long exhale to the shorter inhale, and she comments that it strengthens the vagal nerve tone. Has there been any research done on that?
I think so, yes. I think there's a few people who are engaging in the power of the what happens with chanting. I just haven't looked. It's on there. If you just Google, probably good studies too.
And also there was like a long like book list or list of references and resources in the beginning. Will you be sharing that somewhere?
Well, I can take the slide and put it on the Facebook page, but you're going to own the slides
Okay.
and the video. Then I'll put it on the Facebook page if you
Okay.
like.
Awesome. Thank you. And the greatest obstacle to enlightenment is getting past the delusion that you're not already enlightened and recognize that you already are. Um, but for developmental trauma, for instance, how long does it take one to move through? Is it years, decades to see the clarity of that truth?
It could be decades. It depends on very much on the person, on their intention, and it could take a long time. It really depends on the person, but you have to be determined and get involved in the feeling of love for the practice so that it sustains you. It makes you want to do it. Yeah, I can't say how long it takes because each person is different. You know, people have terrible traumas and are able to cut through the illusion quickly, and some people don't have terrible traumas at all and they can't get past their convinced belief in the ego. It takes a long time sometimes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
A question from Thomas. What is the purpose of using Ujjayi breath in seated pranayama meditation?
We didn't do too much ujjayi, we did pursed lips, but ujjayi simply slows the breath down, and that changes our nervous system action, okay? So uh, by prolonging the inhalation, which is what Patanjali says is one of the three kinds of pranayama. He says prolonged inhale, prolonged exhale, and breath stoppage, pretty much. He doesn't really talk about the short breath that I know of. But so when you ujjayi, you're closing the aperture through the breath. It's the one where you close the glottis, and so it's comparable to the pursed lips breath. So, you know, you're just slowing the breath down. You can hear it. That's one of the reasons now. Suppose you're sitting in meditation. You can now hear the breath. You can feel it. So your attention goes to that utmost, simplest foundation of reality, which is prana. And you're taking attention and compelling it to the prana by making the prana give you sense data. That's one of the things. But again, it's lengthened. And it's do you ever make mayonnaise? You have to pour it in, you have to pour the oil in slowly so it emulsifies. So it blends, it becomes assimilated in a smooth way. The same thing with the prana. If you enter the prana slowly, it blends smoothly and with a sense of harmonious, you know, equality that gives the equal vision. That's what I would say is ujjayi. What would you say?
Yeah.
Somebody says the last part was really fast.
Mm.
Hopefully we will see a recording of it. Did you not see the recordings that are being offered?
Yeah, they are going to be all the recordings and the slides are always put on the platform within 24 hours. So you'll definitely be able to go through and pause the
Mhm.
slides, or if you need to rewind anything, you can go back and take notes and catch anything that you may have missed.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's a question from Ross. What are the different names to describe the energy humans can harness from breathing air into the lungs and drawing in the universal consciousness?
I'm not sure I understand that question. I don't know what I'm reading here.
Ross, would you like to
Different names.
clarify the different names to describe the energy?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Okay, then
Um,
I do
maybe I
have,
don't know the answer. Maybe you know the answer.
I'm not sure what he's referring to. The Okay, so the next question is when looking at someone with ADD, would we recommend the cooling breath?
Yes. In a word, yes, I would think so, definitely. ADD is a good thing for it is the breath holding also. I mean, I think we all have a little bit of attention deficit, and breath technique is to cure that in effect. So you're doing things to keep your own attention. When we observed the Shri Yantra, and I really wish, you know, you may think that I go through material fast, but it's a choice between not telling you these things because I won't see you again, or telling them to you and letting you explore them. And the Shri Yantra is a very good device for disciplining attention. It's like the barbells for your attention, okay? If you keep your attention focused on that center bindu, and the Shri Yantra is going to be going all over the place, the downward and the upward, you just keep your awareness 5 minutes, you're going to find your awareness is very, very, very tight and like a muscle if you have the ADD. So for other people, you know, you want to give them stuff to do. ADD, I think, is pervasive, partly because people aren't, you know, kids aren't moving around and playing, is what they should be doing a lot outside. But if that's the case, Hatha yoga is good for ADD, I think.
Yeah.
You know what was good for ADD when I lived in the ashram? I chopped. So for a couple of hours every morning, from about 3:30 to 5:30, I was chopping onions. Now, if my mind wandered, bam, I'd be cutting little pieces off my finger, which I did. And it made it so that you stop letting your mind wander. One of the problems with ADD is that it doesn't matter. One of my best students of breath awareness was a Haitian guy. I didn't know why he was so good at this. Turns out he was in this earthquake there, and he was trapped under a building, and he couldn't breathe. But he could breathe, but very little. He had very little space to breathe in his lungs, and he became completely focused on his breath. And so when it matters, your ADD goes away. You should think that you're on a tightrope when you do your practices. You should think that it matters, like life and death. That's really important. That's called yoga. You're yoking the intention to survive. Do some breath holding. That'll help.
Yeah. So the next question is Saraswati
Saraswati.
and the other myriad of gods and goddesses in Hinduism. What would be what would you say the purpose did or do they serve for the Indian for people in India, for Indian population?
You should go to you know, theology school, and if religion and religious figures have a function, one thing is they within the iconography of the different deities is teachings. Okay, they're not verbal teachings, they're not textual. Okay, the teachings are in the symbolism. Symbolism is full of teachings that aren't verbal. So that's one thing. They give you a focal point for reverence and love. So you want to generate love, right? You want to generate reverence. Well, you pick an object. Okay. In our practice, we were picking an internal object. Okay, with the breath, which has form and no form. But you want to pick an object so you can start the motor of love, devotion, service. That's what I think it is. But that's a big question it's like an academic almost question. It's called functionalism. Is there a function for beings, which we have done throughout history, to create a form to worship or of the absolute? I don't know. Seems I like Saraswati because of the symbolism that we mentioned. It's relevant to prana.
Yeah. Let's see. There are some pranayama techniques that require very intense breath activation. What is your opinion on this?
You know, I think, you know, last week I was trying to bring out that the when we awaken the Kundalini, which is the intelligence, okay, the supremely intelligent energy, it knows what we need. And I think a lot of pranayama practices are one size fits all in a way that really isn't effective. And also people get involved in the technique and they don't realize what the real purpose, which we have said, is to calm the mind, okay? Because then the seer will know his own nature. So if you're doing stuff that agitates the mind, if you're doubtful about it, if you're struggling with it, don't fucking do it. It's not getting you going where you want to go. Do love. Inhale and exhale with love. That's better than crazy stuff.
I
I don't know if I'm giving you the answers you want to hear, so maybe you have a better answer.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's all in practice really when it comes down to the pranayama techniques and yeah, it just comes with practice and it depends
Yeah.
on what you're looking, what you could
True,
be
Mika.
looking for or what you need at the
Exactly.
moment.
And also, if we're approaching the breath as divine, as God, as goddess, as the highest principle or consciousness, why would you wrestle with it? Why would you try to force it into a situation where it's following a certain regimental thing? That's not what you do with people you love or with beings that you love. You must approach it with that relational feel. I do, anyway. Maybe somebody else does it more effectively the way you're talking about. And I will bow to them and you can ask them about this.
Yeah, I do have a question. You mentioned earlier about the differences between samskaras and vasanas.
Yeah.
Um, like one, like I'm just kind of curious, like where does implicit bias fall? Like, is it more of a deep impression in the subtle body, or is it a vasana?
I would call it a vasana. That's
Okay.
how I experience them. And but you see, Mika, it's not just because it's sort of superficial, doesn't mean that it's not incredibly powerful. The culture you're born into, we could have been, I'm from New York City. Like I have a whole orientation and I think the way I think is the way people should think. And then you realize if I had grown up somewhere else with another set of people, I probably would think like them. We're very, very influenced by our culture and uh, inhibited from our growth and our potential by it. Not anymore.
Great. Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me now. I might have moved my microphone away. Um, but Thomas says, I'm finding it hard to find good information on tantric theory and practice. It seems Western modern interpretation is focused on breathing and lovemaking in the Sting tradition. What are your thoughts on that aspect of Tantra? Does it have any validity?
Oh, the Sting. That was funny. Sting was bragging about making love for 5 hours. And a comedian he was talking to said, "What do you do? Bring a book?" But anyway, so one of the sexual forms of Tantra seems to uh, advocate that the male stay erect for a very long period of time. Maybe tantric people do get something out of that. That's not something that I experience, but we did do some sort of capturing of the eros by creating the sense of the interior linga, the rod and the staff, and loving that, and in effect oblations to that using our breath and our awareness. So we kind of interiorize it. But what you're going to do, first of all, go to the best person for real time. I think best if you want to get deep academic knowledge is Christopher Wallace, and then anybody he recommends, and because he's also a practitioner. But I don't emphasize the lovemaking thing with the Sting staying, claiming that he does that all day. But But the thing is, though, that if you get into a relationship with the universe, which is like a romantic love, using the breath as your connection, it's really fun and easy and sort of uh, supportive. And whatever your orientation is, you can experience the universe as the love object. And you approach it through prana. You exchange with it through prana. That's what I do. So, but don't read about it in a book. Do it. Find out what goes on inside you.
Yeah, I think that's kind of leads to the next question a little bit. When you say that like when we breathe in, we can get energy or prana from the universal consciousness. That's correct.
Yeah.
And then I guess she's saying, or they saying, can you suggest any more resources on this topic? You know,
Well,
along
I
with the
really hope that you'll look at the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, which is a text which reveres the prana as divine. And when you have reverence, remember how it says expanding the center? When you love and when you worship, your will and your heart center opens. Okay? So also when you wish well other people, so-called other people, like if you wish well, as you go down the street and there's people around you and you actively wish them well, it expands your will center. And what happens is that you get more energy, if you open a hose and there's all this energy and you keep opening it, the more energy gets through. So the love and the well-wishing to beings opens these important centers, which feeds the others. So that's one way. Did it make sense? You increase energy through these practices. Now you have to ground the energy because otherwise you're going to be ecstatic and inappropriate. So what you do is you do hatha yoga to keep it grounded, and you offer service and love to humanity. You don't have to be like a crazy server, hurting yourself with sacrifice. Just smiling, being kind. This gives energy. That opens your centers.
there's one more question. In this age of intense uncertainty like COVID, how would you describe the path to acceptance?
Okay, so what I'm doing is first I'm grounding myself with breath awareness, and I had skipped over this time the slide of Lot's wife, or I didn't skip it too much, but she's leaving the burning city, but she turned around. You had to look at it. Oh, it's terrible. Don't be Lot's wife right now. Stay centered, one day at a time, one moment at a time. Being appropriate in the moment is going to be available to you if you stay in present moment awareness. This is a time of adaptation or death, really. Economic death, every kind of not good thing. This is mother evolution. She's not very sentimental, okay? Get with it. You think that you're Moses, okay? It's not going to be easy. So there's that. So you get a hold of yourself using practice. Then you start looking for the benefits, for the advantages. My Baba used to say, a warrior turns every situation to her advantage. What's good about this? Is it teaching the whole world some few important lessons? One lesson about our connectivity. Are we going to become more tribal, or are we going to understand that we're one? And unfortunately, that's the case. You're going to have to know that you're one. So there's a lot of lessons that are being taught us. You're seeing that the meat packing plants are having issues. Is this something that we need to look at about our culture? Is our way of getting food that we like to pretend isn't happening? So there's illumination happening. So you're going to look at the positive. Why? Because you want to survive. And if you want to survive, you're not going to complain and you're not going to say how awful it is. You're going to go forward. That's what you're going to do. That's what I do.
And so thank you, Mary.
I wanted to point out we have a Facebook page, so we put stuff on that's relevant. I just put on an interesting thing that it shows a little video of a little sound making machine. It just makes it sort of a machine. And if you think it's going to sound like brainstorm, it sounds like brainstorm. It makes that word. Or if you think it's going to say green needle, if you prepare and say, it's going to say green needle, it says that. And those are not two things that have, phonemes are not in common, but it shows the power of that's a vasana. It's a primed expectation of our expectations to create what we experience. So I recommend you go to our page to look at that and then share stuff that's relevant, and we can keep our conversation going.
This is the end of our lesson and the end of this module with Mary Riley Nichols on the art of breathing.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Good night. See you next time.
You too.
All
Bye.
right.